I'm Adriana Stein, and this is SEO in 2024.
Adriana, what's your number one SEO tip for 2024?
Yes, so my tip involves having to do more with less, which I know a lot of us have felt that across this year, but I think going into next year, it's going to be the number one thing that we have to face in SEO.
Okay, so I can understand doing more with less if you're put in that situation and you have to do that. But is that a choice that you would actually voluntarily choose by yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in the marketing world in general, we are so heavily affected by what happens with the economy, what happens with changes in technology, and all of that kind of just comes together to influence the way that we have to work. And so I don't think that we in SEO would make that choice. I mean, we would love to just, go back to SEO like 15 years ago, where it was very easy just to, write some keywords and some text and it worked and it was really that simple. But nowadays, there's just so much more that goes into SEO, not just in terms of like the technical part, which is it's super complicated, but just also, I would say the pressure really to drive impact. And that's really what a lot of SEOs are going to face more and more going forward, even though we've had a recession and before that we had COVID, and now there's kind of SEO has come to some new standards. I think that it's really going to be SEO has to be really on the ball to be worthwhile, and that's going to be a big game changer in 2024.
Okay, so even if SEOs don't have to at the moment, you would suggest that they have to be more frugal with cash and be more efficient with their time so that they can use those skills to better leverage themselves in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's not necessarily by choice, but it's the conditions that we work under, and that is going to be the conditions that the stakeholders expect and what they expect from SEO to produce. So it's kind of just a consequence of the circumstances, and there's not really a way around it because if you try to be, if you try to do inefficient SEO nowadays, it's not going to go very far. So you kind of just have to accept it and go with it, and then try to learn and optimize what you can, especially related to processes, and process efficiency is going to be a major piece of that.
So you talk about because of the circumstances. Is it primarily because of maybe recession? Is it primarily because of maybe AI, or are there other reasons that are you want to do this?
I think, yeah, for sure, those two things. And I think a third thing is also just competition and market saturation. So we're under these circumstances where we have the option for technology to make us more efficient. Whether that is still really the case is a question. Really all depends on how you use such technology, not even just AI, but any sort of like MarTech marketing related technology, as that's also rapidly changing. And there's just so much competition as well. And, SEOs have done a really good job over the years of informing their audience of how effective SEO can truly be. And so now they've got this investment, but now they need to do something with it. And there's a lot of companies who are producing more, especially now with AI as well. And so there's just kind of these three things that are coming together with limited budgets because of the recession, but more technology. And you have to really find a way to stand out through all of the competition. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that. That's all packed together. But, what we as SEOs, we really can't change any of those top level circumstances. We just have to find a way to work within them. And that's going to be the most effective way to really prove ourselves with our career going forward. I really don't think, even if we suddenly have an economic explosion and everything is super positive, I really don't think the mindset around that is going to change. I think it's going to kind of stay because that's what we've become used to. Stakeholders, CFOs, CEOs, they don't want to go and waste money. They have seen how there's been a lot of problems related to that, and they're trying to really condense and optimize. I, as a CEO myself, I have really heavily looked at our technology, our processes, and that's certainly something that I wouldn't suddenly go back to just because we had a better economy and start being inefficient. I would want to just continue moving forward with being as efficient as possible.
And how differently does this affect someone in-house versus agency side?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, we both have the same pressure, no matter whether you're working as an agency, freelancer, in-house, you have the same pressure to drive results with SEO. I think where there might be a difference is when you're working in-house, you probably have a bit less time pressure because that's just inherently part of the job. You're typically not in every company, but from my experience with a lot of our clients, there's a whole lot less time pressure for what the employee can accomplish versus what the agency can accomplish. If you hire an agency, you basically expect them to jump in like straight away, get it. I mean, our clients expect us to start producing content within the first few weeks, honestly. It's very, very fast. So you have to onboard very quickly. Whereas someone working in-house, they might take even 3 months just to learn about the company, about the product or their service or how things work. So there's the same pressure that at the end of the day, there needs to be results. But I think the time that it takes, there's going to be a lot more pressure on the agency because that's really what they're hired to do. They're hired to become, come in, be very efficient, be very effective in terms of bringing results generally within a few months.
So it sounds like SEO should move in-house instead of agency side.
Well, there are two sides to that because I think that SEO in the past, because it lacked a lot of conversion-driven efforts, and I say this really as a person coming from SEO and who has learned a lot about PPC from my team, because at my agency, we offer holistic marketing services. And I have seen how PPC is so conversion-driven and so like, get the slide, go, get it done. And SEO was so kind of like, okay, let's take some time to edit. And who, of the 10 people need to review all of this stuff. And it just takes so much longer. And the processes behind it are just much less efficient, traditionally speaking, compared with PPC. And so I think where the agency can come in and help is if you really understand how to effectively execute SEO, which as an agency, you do have a bit more of that broader expertise because you have applied it across a lot of different projects versus just one company at a time. Then you have more of an overall insight into how to do that effectively. And then that in combination with the time pressure that the agencies have, then typically things just get done so much faster just because simply if you don't do your job, you're probably not going to have a client anymore. So I tend to see that's kind of a big difference between our team working and sometimes our clients. Like sometimes our clients can even struggle to keep up with us a bit, but it's difficult because we know we have this time expectation for results. So you kind of do got to move that fast because you don't want to, have a disappointment down the road. Like, okay, why didn't this work? Why were there no conversions? So I think an agency just, has more experience to kind of drive that forward. So I think it really depends on where you are within your strategy, the level of investment you have in SEO, the time you have to give to SEO, whether which one is better for you or a combination of both, actually, I would say is the best, in my opinion.
So there's certainly pros and cons, I guess, with being quicker, being more efficient. So certainly pros from what you've been describing about being able to service clients' needs more rapidly, reacting to things. But I guess there are certain tasks that SEOs do. You don't want them to be too quick on them because you want them to be completely accurate.
Yeah.
So what are some tasks that you don't want to speed up too much?
So I may be on the unpopular opinion with this, but I actually think using AI for content production in terms of like full content writing, because we've done a lot of testing with this. I did a whole series for the Wix SEO Hub where I was testing this across different industries on different outputs from AI for full length content production. And the quality of that is just so bad. And I could maybe lack some expertise in terms of my prompting, but I specifically specialize in complex B2B, and I just don't see where AI can have an in-depth understanding of how to produce full-length content. So I'm talking about like a 3,000 word user guide for something or writing a case study or things like that. That it just takes subject matter expertise.
So, sorry, is this content without any seed content? So you're just getting it to initiate that content right from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, you can add in some elements to the prompting to make it more specific, but I did notice in comparison with e-commerce, you can kind of get away with e-commerce content, SEO-wise from AI when it's short, but also when it's not complex, because there are complex e-commerce products. But in terms of B2B, then it just doesn't work because the time that you have to take to figure out all of your prompting and then edit everything, and it just takes so much longer than working with like the traditional, okay, here's my strategy for this content piece. Here's my subject matter expert that they're going to contribute to this. Here's probably the writer who's going to help draft this out, and then an editor. And it sounds like a lot of steps, but actually in the end, what I have found is that the quality is so much lower. And so that's where I think that speeding that piece up with AI is really going to be harmful in the end. And if you just start, pumping out content that's low quality, not only is that not really going to help your audience at all, they're going to see right through that. It's also a kind of a spam indicator. And I'm talking about thousands of pieces of content a day, which there are some websites experimenting with this. I've heard of one scenario within the finance industry, and I just go, oh no, this is what should not be happening. And I won't name this person because I don't want to call them out, but I did specifically ask them, is any of this being manually reviewed for accuracy? And they're like, nope, it all just goes live. And this I find really, truly heartbreaking.
Is this on a top brand's website, or is this just someone doing it themselves? It isn't top brand's website. Okay.
It's a leading finance brand that is doing this. And I'm like, oh, maybe you have some short-term gains, but in the long run, that is just absolutely not the way to become more efficient and do high quality content at all.
So what does doing more with less mean for the ultimate SEO team structure? Does that mean that there are less people working in your SEO team?
It can be, but mainly what it comes down to is having very established processes. And this really stems from that I've seen time and time again across a lot of projects at my agency. I've also heard this from a lot of my colleagues in SEO, that there is this big struggle to just simply get things live, get content live or get technical changes live. There was a report from IRA last year, the State of SEO report, where they mentioned that the average time for technical changes to get them live is 6 months. Which is insane because if you think about the amount that you can improve on within SEO within 6 months, if things are just live, it's like night and day. So really, rather than just focusing on like content editing, which is great, you still need to edit your content, you still need high quality content, but really look deeply at the processes and how your team is structured. So, does everyone know what they're supposed to do? Do you have deadlines? Do you have a workflow with steps from A to B? Do you even have the full resources to actually get all of that live, especially on the dev side? Because that's where I've seen a lot of the biggest bottlenecks are. There's this beautiful content that's created and then it just sits in the project management tool and sometimes 6 months or longer because there's just no dev resource to put that live. And that's such a tragedy because, that's content that could be ranking and converting already for months if it was just live. And those little things like that, they add up and they really hinder you. And so that's where you can really do more with less, is just look at the background, the operational background of how is SEO actually established and who does what and who makes sure that things get done, who makes sure that things go live and are optimized also once they're live as well.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2024?
I would say the same thing, honestly. Just look at what is in your operational processes. Do you have too many tasks for one specific person? Is one specific person trying to do too much? And maybe you need to have 2 people doing that. Or maybe do you need to reduce your amount of content because nothing's going live? People can't keep up. but, maybe just produce a little bit less content so that you ensure that it does go live. Or the same with technical changes. Can you just get a couple technical changes done versus a lot that just never goes live? Break the project down into little bits and then just start to see where you can optimize things. And there may be a place for AI for some specific people who like it. And I have found it to be effective for short form writing and summaries and things like metadata, all of that. Content ideation, I've also found it to be really useful. So if that can help speed you up, then great. But just, make sure what you're doing actually goes live and it doesn't take 6 months of resources where there's no changes done. That's really ineffective SEO. So try to turn that on its head and at least do a little bit versus none.
There may be a place for AI, but don't let it help you win in the volume game.
Yeah. In terms of just like bad content volume, like that's not going to work. With so many companies doing SEO nowadays, you really have to find a way for your content to stand out. So the best way to do that is, even if you do use AI in the process, try to personalize it as much as possible. Talk about real customers, real customer use cases and data, get subject matter expertise, specifically from within your company or within your industry. If you don't have someone at your company, add quotes, things like that. These are things that AI can't pull up. So, if someone is prompting write a blog article for X topic, then maybe 2,000 companies can have the same kind of information. So you've got to put in some effort to make it a lot more personal and unique and specific.
Adriana Stein is founder and CEO at AS Marketing, and you can find her over at asmarketingagency.com. Adriana, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2024.
Thanks so much for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2024, the book, over at SEOin2024.com.